We have all used the word fate. We use it when something goes wrong and we cannot explain why. We use it to comfort ourselves after loss. We use it to describe things that feel inevitable, as if something invisible, an invisible hand, had arranged them long before we arrived. But when the ancient Greeks spoke of Moira, of fate, they meant something entirely different. They were not talking about blind chance, and they were not talking about fatalism, that passive resignation to forces beyond our control. And definitely they were not talking about fortune tellers. Moira was something far more precise, far more philosophical, and far more demanding. It was the distribution of one's portion within the cosmic order. But before we go further, we need to clarify the words. Because when we say fate in English, we are collapsing two completely different ideas that the Greeks kept very carefully apart. The first is what we normally call luck, the accident, the thing that happens to you out of nowhere. You find money on the street, for example. You happen to be in the right place at the right moment for something. The Greeks had a specific word for this kind of luck, Hermaion. Literally, it means the gift of Hermes, the unexpected, unearned thing that falls into your hands without any warning. Hermes, of course, is the god of thresholds, of the moment between here and there, between intention, outcome. So his gift is by definition unpredictable. You cannot plan for it, you cannot earn it. It simply arrives or it doesn't. The second kind of luck is something entirely different, and this is where most translations go wrong, and even the Greeks today confuse the two words. The Greeks had the word Tyche from the verb tinchano, which means to hit the mark, to reach the target I was aiming for. So this is not the luck of the windfall. This is the luck of alignment, the moment when your preparation, your aim, and the conditions of the world converge and you land precisely where you intended. So Tyche is not something that happens to you, it is something you participate in. You can cultivate it. You can make yourself more capable of it by refining your aim, deepening your understanding, strengthening your character. The person with Tyche is the person who has trained themselves to recognize the opening and move through it at the right moment. And there is even a word for it. It is called Kairos. The ancient Greeks had two different words for time. Chronos was time as we know it, the measurable flow of seconds, of hours and years. Kairos was all about quality, about the right moment, the right opportunity, the opening in reality when action becomes possible. So Chronos asks you how much time has passed. Kairos asks, is this the right time? Chronos is the clock, Kairos is the moment, kind of. Ironically, modern Greeks still use the word Kairos every single day, but usually in a completely different sense. Ask a Greek, what's the Kairos tomorrow? And they will probably not talk about destiny, opportunity, or the perfect moment for action. They are asking about the weather forecast. Somewhere along the way, one of the deepest concepts in Greek thought ended up on the evening news between temperatures and wind speeds. So the ancient Greeks used Kairos to speak about the decisive moment that shapes a life. Modern Greeks use the same word to ask whether they should take an umbrella or not. Yet the older meaning never truly disappeared. If you want to go deeper, you start opening dictionaries, you start realizing stuff. And the fact is that every important decision in life still depends on Kairos, regardless if you understand it or not, recognizing the right moment before it passes. So, one form of luck is pure gift. The other is earned readiness meeting the right condition. The modern world has merged these two entirely different things into one word, luck. And in doing so has lost something very important. Because if all luck is Hermaion, then nothing at all is in your hands. But if Tyche is real, if the alignment of character, preparation and timing is something you can actually cultivate, then the whole situation changes completely. This matters here because Moira belongs to neither of these categories. Moira is not the windfall of Hermaion, and it is not the precise strike of Tyche. It is something deeper than both. It is the structural framework within which both become possible in the first place. To understand Moira, you have to stop seeing it as some kind of a destination and start seeing it as a principle of structure. The word itself comes from the verb mirome, which means to receive the portion that belongs to me. Its closest relatives in Greek are meros, which is part, and meridio, which is share, and merikos, which is partial. So the root is about division, is about proportion and belonging. And it has nothing to do with punishment or reward or anything like that. A portion is not a sentence, a portion is a framework. Moira defines the relationships and boundaries that make the world possible in the first place. So it follows from anangi, necessity, the deeper principle that underlies all structure. This is why in Greek mythology the Moirae, the three fates, are the daughters of Anangi. Necessity comes first. Moira is what necessity gives shape to. Without limits, there is no form. Without a portion, there is no order. Without relation, there is no interaction. And without interaction, there is no becoming. So Moira is not what suffocates you. It is what defines the very field within which you can act. And it interacts with you dynamically as you move through life. In Greek thought, Moira doesn't decide what you will do. It declares what is possible given your character, your choices, your circumstances, and the very rhythm of the world around you. Moira is the principle of proportion, a kind of equilibrium within a system of forces. So your portion is not arbitrary, it flows from your position within the whole. This is why the three Moirae, Clotho, Lachesis and Atropos are not goddesses of punishment. They symbolize the structure of a possibility, its beginning, its unfolding, and its completion. And we are not talking about compulsion, we are talking about process. Here is perhaps the most important things the Greek understood about Moira and the thing most easily lost in translation. Moira does not abolish will. It actually makes will intelligible. If actions had no consequences, if the world had no structure, if every choice dissolved without a trace, then freedom itself would be an illusion. It would be noise without meaning. Moira defines the context in which Proairesis, which is conscious, deliberate choice, carries weight. Proairesis is not impulse. Proairesis is the free decision that arises from knowledge and judgment. The more we act from impulse, the more mechanical we become. The more we act from genuine understanding, the more we actually participate in shaping our portion. Your portion does not change through wishes. It changes when you change. As character shifts, so does your position within the web of relationships that constitutes your life. And as your position shifts, so does your Moira. Heraclitus says, Ethos Anthropo Daimon. Character is a person's demon, a person's fate. Moira does not fall from the sky. It emerges from the invisible consequences of your actions. Small choices slowly weave the very thread of a life. and that thread is the path. Without inner transformation, the portion will stay the same. When you change, and I mean genuinely change, Moira shifts with you. And this is not because some external force adjusted your destiny, but because you changed your position within the structure itself. So what finally is Moira? Moira is not an invisible force that decides for you. It is the distribution of what is possible within the order of the world, the portion that flows from the nature of things, and the framework that gives consequence to your choices. Moira is not something final, it is a dialogue between the human being and reality. The real question is, who am I becoming within the structure of the world? Clotho, the beginning of the thread. When we think of the fates, most of us picture three figures who write our destiny. But this image is a later one. It does not belong to the oldest layers of Greek thought. In ancient Greek philosophy, Clotho neither writes anything, nor decides anything, nor predicts anything. Clotho symbolizes the beginning of the weaving, the moment when a possibility starts to take shape. And that goes deeper even than the very concept of Moirai itself. The name Clotho comes from the verb Clotho, which means to spin, to turn, to revolve, to begin drawing out a thread, to set something in motion, to begin knitting. So for the Greeks, the universe is motion. Form is born from rotation, from transition, and from energy. And Clotho is the symbol of this first turning, the moment when the formless begins to acquire form. She does not represent the end of a journey, she represents the beginning of a process. Clotho does not choose your fate. Clotho symbolizes the birth of consequences. Every thought, every action, every decision, it is as if you are pulling a fiber from raw, unworked material. The moment you pull it, the weaving begins. Clotho represents the moment when a possibility becomes an act, when an intention acquires force, when an action enters the chain of causes, and when a pattern begins to form. She is the very beginning of a path. At its deepest level, Clotho expresses a simple and unsparing axiom. Nothing begins without a starting point, and every beginning carries within it the nature of its ending. Whatever you begin, a way of thinking, a habit, an action, a decision, a desire, you begin drawing a thread, and that thread, slowly or quickly, becomes a road. This is why in Greek thought freedom is connected to the beginning, to the first cause you set in motion, not to passivity, not to comfort, not to waiting for things to arrange themselves. You are most free at the moment you begin the thread. That is where you set the direction. After that, Lachesis simply unspools it. Every repeated thought becomes a tendency. Every tendency becomes a habit. Every habit becomes character, ethos. Clotho is that first turn of the wheel, the moment when nothing has yet solidified and yet everything has already been set in motion. So the real question is not what is fate weaving for me. It is what thread am I beginning to spin each day through my actions. Even the smallest pattern, given time, becomes a road. Nothing is lost. Every action leaves a trace in the very fabric of existence. Clotho is the beginning of the weaving, the moment a possibility becomes reality, and the first turning that sets the direction of the thread. She does not determine your fate, she just reveals a fundamental law of existence. Whatever thread you begin to spin, that is what you will, in the end, wear. Lachesis, your life is not a chance. It is an unspooling. After Clotho, the beginning of the thread, comes Lachesis, the second of the three fates. But Lachesis does not bring luck. She does not decide your future. The word has nothing to do with luck or chance in the way we use those words today. Lachesis means the distribution of the portion, the unspooling of what has already begun. She is the path that an action follows once it has taken form. The name comes from the verb langhano, which means to receive the portion that falls to me, to be assigned a share, to receive by lot according to order or distribution. So this is not about good fortune or bad fortune. This is not chaos. This is all about proportion. If Clotho is the beginning of the thread, Lachesis is its development. She shows how the thread, your original choice, unfolds through time. Lachesis does not impose anything on you. She simply reveals sooner or later what you already began. Every beginning, however small it appears, carries within it a dynamic. So Lachesis is the moment when that dynamic becomes a trajectory. In Greek thought, she symbolizes the unfolding of consequences, the development of choices that are made, the relationship between cause and effect, the shaping of a life within the framework of the world. Lachesis does not constrain you. Like Clotho, she mirrors you. She develops what you have already woven through your actions. Freedom lives in the beginning of the weaving, as we said. That is Clotho's domain, where everything is still open. But once you have chosen, be it a particular action, a stance, a way of life, whatever, Lachesis takes over and begins to unspool what you started. We're not talking about fatalism here, we're talking about consequence. Lachesis does not show you what you should have done or what you fear. She shows you what arises from your own inner law. She gives direction to your ethos, not to what you desire, not to what you imagine yourself to be, but to your actual condition. In human life, Lachesis appears as time. No action bears fruit immediately, no change completes itself in a single moment, and no pattern forms in a single day. So, Lachesis is the time of ripening. Just as a seed needs seasons to become a tree, just as the wine needs fermentation to develop as a wine, so every choice needs duration to reveal itself. If you sow anger, time will return it to you. If you sow discipline, time will make it visible. If you sow clarity of thought, you will meet it along the road. Lachesis creates nothing new. She simply unfolds you through space and time. Lachesis is the distribution of the portion, the unspooling of the thread you began, and the revelation of your inner law through time. She does not decide for you, she records what you are becoming. And in the end, she shows one fundamental truth. Life does not give you what you want. It gives you what you weave. Atropos, the point of no return. After Clotho, the beginning of the thread, and Lachesis, the unfolding of the path, comes the third fate, Atropos. And here we have one of the most misunderstood concepts. Atropos is not simply death, she's not a fatal ending, and she's not punishment. Atropos symbolizes something far more serious, the irrevocable, the moment when a path has matured so fully that it can no longer return to its original state of possibility. The word comes from the verb trepo, which means to turn, to twist, combined with a negating prefix alpha. So atropos literally means that which no longer turns. It does not change direction. It cannot take another course. not because of violence or whatever, not because of some external force that is trying to impose itself, but because the form has reached completion. When a thread has been woven to its end, it cannot become raw fiber again. If the coat has been made, this is the coat you will wear. So if Clotho is the beginning and Lachesis is the unspooling, then Atropos is the final sealing. And this is not an ending in the sense of destruction, but an ending in the sense of the completion of a process, whatever that process is. So Atropos marks the point at which an action, a habit, a pattern of living has ripened, has solidified, and has taken its final form. At this point, the result cannot be undone, because the chain of consequences has closed. And of course, it has to do with death too, because it is a closing of a chapter too. But none of these three fates cancels freedom. Freedom lives where in the whole process? As we said, in the beginning with Clotho, in the path you develop with Lachesis, and in the irrevocable Atropos, in the sense that you are called to take responsibility for what you have made. Atropos is the point where potentiality finally becomes actuality. It is the moment when what you did, what you repeated, what you cultivated, becomes a permanent element of your character. And at this point, the world no longer gives you options, it will give you truth. In the life of the soul, Atropos is the moment when a habit has already shaped you. A way of life has become automatic, and the road has become an identity. And this does not mean you can no longer change as a being, but it means that this particular thread has now completed itself. If you want change, the old thread does not unravel. You must begin a new one, a new Clotho, a new beginning, a new direction. Atropos shows that the old pattern has reached its natural end. So Atropos is the irrevocability of a form, the moment a path reaches completion, the outcome that no longer changes because the substance has taken shape. And yes, of course, the end of a life, if we see it from this angle. And this is just one angle of it. Atropos does not imprison you, she reveals you. And she carries the deepest lesson of all three fates. Whatever you weave with full awareness, that is what you live, irrevocably. So we have four concepts and one idea. We have Moira, the structure of what is possible. We have Clotho, the moment it begins. We have Lachesis, the time it takes to unfold. And we have Atropos, the truth of what it became. So the Greeks did not believe in a fate that falls upon you from above. They believed in a fate that rises from you, from the texture of your choices, from the accumulation of your days, from the slow and patient work of character. The thread is always yours to begin. So the question is always, who am I becoming? And am I weaving it with open eyes? There is one last distinction worth making, because the Greeks made it carefully and we have lost it almost entirely. In Greek there are two words that both get translated as fate or destiny. They are Heimarmene and Pepromenon, and they are not the same thing. Heimarmene comes from Myrome, the same root as Mira itself. It means the fate that is lived through interaction, the portion that emerges from the ongoing relationship between you and the world around you. Think of it this way. Imagine you are a player inside a vast game. The world of this game has its rules, its physics, its structures. But how you move through it, how you respond, what you choose at each junction of the game, all of that shapes what comes back to you. Heimarmene is the result of that dynamic. It is not fixed. It responds to you as you respond to it. Pepromeno is different. It comes from the verb peprote, that which has been fixed, that which has been assigned as the given condition. So this is the track itself, the level you have been placed on. Not the way you play it, but the very terrain. So in the same game analogy, imagine your character gets stuck somewhere in the game, wedged into a corner of the map because of your choices. You went there and you got stuck. And you are already solidified into that position. The avatar cannot move, not because the game is punishing you, but because the geometry of where you ended up inside the game no longer allows any movement. We have all experienced this with video games. The avatar gets stuck somewhere and you cannot get it out. That is Pepromenon in a way. The condition you have arrived at, the given that now surrounds you. So one is the living interaction and the other one is the fixed terrain. And something else important here. Pepromenon is not a life sentence, it is a starting point. Even the most fixed terrain can be the beginning of a new Heimarmene, a new dynamic, if you begin to move differently. The Moirognomonion. And now one last thing that is hidden inside the word Moira itself. In Greek, mires are also units of measurement, degrees, the 360 degrees of a circle. And the instrument that reads them, that measures the precise position of something within the circle, is called the Moirognomonion. The Moira gnomon, the measurer of degrees. The word gnomon comes from gnosis, which is knowledge and recognition. So the Moirognomonion is literally the instrument that knows the degrees. Now think about what that means philosophically. A circle has 360 degrees. Every point on that circle has a precise position, a precise mira. Not more, not less. To know where you are in the circle is not fatalism. It is orientation. It is the beginning of real movement. Self-knowledge, γνώθεις αυτόν, know thyself, in this light becomes something very specific. It is not vague introspection. It is knowing your exact degrees. Understanding precisely where you are positioned within the cycle, within the movement of things, so that you can act from that position with clarity rather than confusion. Because everything moves in circles, the seasons, the generations, the rise and fall of understanding within a lifetime. And the Greeks understood this as a structural reality. And the person who knows their mire, their degrees, their portion, their exact position in the game, that person is not bound by their circle. They can navigate it. Know your degrees. That is where freedom begins.